Greetings, sailors, and welcome back to World of Warships and a view replay courtesy of no, hang on a second. Can anyone else hear anything right now in the background, or is it just me? Nope, I guess not. Must just have been imagining it. Anyway, so this is Bismarck 70, who has his feet on the ground for a change, or, well, on the water, I suppose. Bismarck has his own channel, and in fact he's also been streaming a bit recently as well, and he's much more known for doing videos about, well, military history. In fact, he's actually kind of rebranded his channel as Military History Visualized. There we go, a word with a V in it. I got there in the end. And he also has had a fair bit of gameplay footage from much more kind of hardcore flight sim games as well. So by that measure, obviously we can take it as read that Bismarck considers World of Warships to be a hardcore sim game, because as a German, of course, he only plays hardcore sim games. We know this of all Germans, that they eschew all other forms of video game entertainment. They only play simulators. This is a well-known established fact. Yes, definitely. So, anyway, he's in the Fletcher. This is the NA server, and you can see right away he's got the defensive AA set up on this, although it's not quite as... he's not quite as invested as heavily in it as I have, and you actually, with my previous Fletcher replay, which is the previous Warships replay to this one, got to see that in action. So, in theory, you know, if there's spotter planes or whatever, he can use that, but his range isn't as good, and I don't think he's got the captain skills for it either. Although he might have manual AA, but I don't know. I don't know what his captain's like, I don't know how many points this captain has, and I don't know what his ship setup is exactly outside of the defensive. So, it's not been a terrible start so far, but they are clearly outnumbered on this flank. He managed to bail out the cap whilst taking fairly minimal damage, and actually landed a torpedo hit in the process. But as you can see, yeah, there's not a lot of them here. There's that Miyoko who's about to die, there's Bismarck himself, and then there's this Iowa that's a little further back. But Bismarck's clearly still interested in just trying to land more hits with the torpedo, so he could just be bailing right now, which would be a sensible strategy, but he's taking the slightly more risky strategy, but also potentially the slightly more rewarding strategy of sticking around a bit more and just making himself a nuisance in the face of this enemy advance, because that's not a bad place to be in a destroyer in the face of advancing enemy ships. But you need room to fall back, you need room to maneuver, because if you get pinned up against a map border or up against an island, at that point that's bad news. So he could just fall back here, but as I say, he is sticking around, and it might also partly be that he has in mind he's going to screen for this Iowa and give them some cover to get away. Once upon a time, of course, he could have just laid a smoke cloud for the Iowa and that would have been fine, and in fact his next smoke isn't that far off being available, although he does only have 3 in total and he's used 1 already, so yeah. But these days the only way that would work would be if the Iowa stopped firing for a sufficient length of time. So he's circling back round to get another drop. He actually landed some more torp hits on the Kurfürst, who, not Kurfürst, the Friedrich der Grosse, the Fat Freddy, who's busily flooding right now, but he's not going to flood to death, unfortunately, but that's all some nice bonus damage. However, in the process of circling back, hey, he's found 2 of those 3 enemy destroyers that were here, and the Tashkent in particular, well, he's high health and also quite a capable gunboat, so that's quite a big threat there alone. But he does make a bit of a mistake here. I mean, arguably in sticking around, you know, you could say that maybe was a mistake, but he should have been shooting at the Mars, because the Mars was the low health ship. But as it is, the Mars ran into a torpedo, so it doesn't actually matter anyway. I don't know if that was something he thought was likely to happen. I mean, when I drop a spread of torps in situations like this, it's usually with the thought that, hey, maybe I'll hit something, but I'm not going to count on it. And in that case, yeah, he got lucky, but yeah, he should have been shooting at the mass, is the long and the short of it. This entire replay, by the way, you know, Bismarck is going to be playing pretty well for the most part, but it's not exactly error-free. So it's going to be a bit educational, and this right here is one of those educational moments. We saw the Tashkent turning, we saw the Tashkent, you know, getting into a position where they could make the drop, and I think Bismarck was maybe just not quite paying attention to that, and of course he was trying to bring his own guns round to bear. Now, it's worked out for him. He has killed the Tashkent, and he survived the torp hit because he took it on the nose section, but that's left him on not a lot of hit points. Although there might be some benefit to that if he's got Adrenaline Rush as a captain skill, but I'm not sure he does. Although, actually, no, I think he does, because he's down to 1.5 minutes of reloads, of torpedo reload now. So, actually, yeah, no, I think he does have Adrenaline Rush. So there's another boat, well, another destroyer. I know what I mean. I know. Well, it's a torpedo boat, but you know what I mean. It's a destroyer, and yeah. Anyway, this, by the way, if it sounds like I'm getting exasperated at points, it's because I did a full run through of this. I recorded the whole thing, or so I thought, and then it turned out no, actually my audio recording software was not running. So I'm in my head. I've done this already, and now I have to do it all over again. Anyway, so he does in fact manage to kill the Mayhan with another torpedo hit, so that's his third kill, and he slightly misses an opportunity there to use his defensive as well, but it's not really important in the scheme of things. So they've stabilised this flank, but overall it's not looking good for them. They've got 2 cap circles apiece, each team, but the enemy team is leading on kills. And their own team has run into some trouble around the D cap, so there's a chance they might lose D. But on this flank at least, it's looking a bit better than it was. They've slowed this enemy advance, and a big part of that has been down to Bismarck. So of the ships that were coming through A, well, the KGV has rather uselessly gone up the 1-2 line, so that leaves the rest of them going through the middle. The Belfast is the big threat. But of course that De Grosser is also not one to be taken lightly. However, the Belfast hasn't used their radar or hydro, and it seems like the De Grosser probably hasn't used their hydro either. So this has turned out to be a very well judged drop. I don't know why the De Grosser's gone to that position. It's a bit odd to me, but there it is. So they've taken 1 hit, and then the 2 that are going to go into his side from the second drop are going to kill him. So that's 1 less enemy ship, so that's quite nice. Now the Belfast has gotten away without taking any damage, unfortunately, so they're still around. That's a bit of a problem perhaps, but that extra kill, you know, a battleship's worth of points, does help them out a bit. Now this is about a minute later on, where basically not a lot happened up until the point where, well, there we go, we know where that last enemy destroyer is because they've just started capping D. So once again, torps out. You might get lucky with a drop, a hit rather. But as it is, well, one of their surviving ships is actually a Baltimore. So the Baltimore pops their radar, and that tells them exactly where this Kagero is. And if they can kill this Kagero, that really helps them out a lot. That removes a big part of the threat to their remaining ships, and it also removes, you know, something that's spotting their remaining ships. Because of what's left on the enemy team, I think well, it's really the Belfast that's the only other stealthy thing. So, yeah, if they can take this guy out of the equation, that's going to really help. So he lands some hits, or doesn't even land any hits, actually. I wasn't paying attention there. But as it is, it's the Edinburgh that gets the kill. And speaking of the Belfast, I mean, I guess they came over here to support that destroyer, but they've now just come into the field of fire of basically all of the remaining ships on this team. So that was not a good plan. They only really just missed eating a torpedo from Bismarck as well. If they'd come around that corner just a tiny bit earlier, that would have been that. That would have been another kill. So he got a bit of damage out of that and actually used some AP in the process, which wasn't a bad plan. Meanwhile, that KGV has finally made a move towards the B cap, and that's a bit of a problem because they cannot afford to lose a cap point right now. They've actually stabilized things to the point where they're now ahead in terms of ships, but the enemy team is still ahead in terms of points. and there's just over 7 minutes left. So there's enough time to turn this around, but it's not like they have the time to sit back and be complacent. They have to be proactive here. The enemy team is in a position where they can sit and do nothing and just defend their cap circles and they'll win. So, once again, positioning for an attack, but arguably this is a bit of a mistake again. And how it's a bit of a mistake is, well, he's coming across the bottom of the B cap here, which leaves him not a lot of room to manoeuvre. He could instead have travelled north and skirted around the King George V that way, and that would have given him a better torp drop angle, as well as giving him a lot more room to manoeuvre. Now, he does get a hit into the nose, and the KGV's flooded, so if somebody sets a fire on this guy, that is then going to stick. But, well, the KGV has guessed he's coming in this direction, or else he's just coming in this direction to avoid fire from the remains of Bismarck's team, who've just finished off one of the other remaining enemy battleships. And so that's left Bismarck with increasingly little room, and so he's had to basically bail out. And even this was a bit of a mistake, arguably, because he could have reset. We did see the KGV fire off in the direction of the rest of his team, and so there was a window there where Bismarck could have gotten a couple of salvos, could have gotten a couple of defense flags, you know, which was nice for the score screen, but crucially could have prevented the KGV from capping B. However, it's not all bad, because despite having been just briefly picked up by this KGV, and if they'd been paying attention, they'd have known, okay, turn into the torpedoes, but no, they turn away. This KGV player was not very good. They did cap for their team, but going up the 1-2 line to begin with was horrible positioning, and then that was absolutely the worst thing they could have done. So, face full of torpedoes, they're dead. Bismarck's team's now ahead on points, but the enemy team's got those 3 cap circles, and there's not a big margin here. So I think there's a brief moment of deciding whether to go back to the A cap or go back to the B cap rather, or go into the A cap, and the A cap is the closest, so that's what he goes for. And this is one of those situations where that speed boost might help a bit, would have got him there just that little bit sooner. And as it is, well, even though they are now capping A, the enemy team's still getting 2 cap circles worth of points, and his own teammates, who still, you know, like the remaining ships are still at B. In fact, the Baltimore's heading for the B cap. They're still at D rather. The Baltimore's heading for the B cap, which is going to be useful. And the Baltimore is low health, so it's understandable they'd be hanging back, not wanting to give their points to the enemy team. But the remaining other 2 ships are definitely healthier, and they could have, I think, pushed round to C earlier. But then, so could Bismarck. What Bismarck is doing right now, coming out of the A cap in this direction, I think he has time, or had time, to get from A straight to C. And again, this is a situation where speed boost would actually have been useful. Sometimes taking the defensive AA does actually bite you in the ass, because being able to get that couple of extra knots of speed can absolutely help out. But as it is, the enemy team stayed just enough far ahead on points, and they still had that 1 cap circle giving them points, even as the Baltimore just pulled in at the end there, that they won. But it was so close. It was so very close. So, just based on performance and damage done, you know, 5 kills, 204k damage, this was a really good game. 1848 base XP. He had the second highest XP of anybody on either team. But at the same time, Bismarck also kind of helped lose that game just because of 1 or 2 poor decisions at various points. And it's easy to say that in retrospect, but that's one of the things that makes playing destroyers as a class a bit on the tricky side, because just 1 or 2 wrong decisions in terms of positioning. You could be doing everything right in terms of doing damage, but 1 or 2 wrong decisions in terms of positioning can really screw you over. So yeah, that was a good game, but at the same time, it was a game that we can maybe take some lessons away from as well. So it was very efficient in a way. He nearly helped win it, but he also kind of helped lose it at the same time. Anyway, so yeah, I thought that was an interesting match though, and if you do feel like going and checking out Bismarck's channels, I will put the links in below. I do recommend it because I think it's quite interesting stuff. And yeah, maybe if he has some other interesting games, he might send them to me at some point. But I thought this was a good one to show on the channel, even though it was another Fletcher game, so close to the other one, and it showed that little things can have big consequences in this game, as in, you know, real life as well. And sometimes it's the chain effect of lots of little things in a row having big consequences at the end of the game. But in this case, it was more like just one or two decisions that were taken ended up having big consequences, if that makes any sense. I don't know. I had a neater conclusion last time round, and then I've forgotten exactly what I said because I'm a dummy and I forgot to hit the record button. So well done me. Anyway, so hopefully you enjoyed this replay, and if you did, you can hit the like button. You can check out Bismarck's channel below. You can sub to my channel if you haven't already, and as always, stay tuned for more.